I like that you said that you probably didn't discuss what you planned to come on here to discuss, because I know that we've been talking about these chats since like October. So I am so excited to have my friend Jazz on with me today. She was the first person who interviewed me and got me into interviewing, and I'm happy to have her join me for National Family Caregivers Month to tell us her story about caring for her parents with her siblings. So welcome, Jazz.
Hey, hi, Vicky. Thank you so much for having me on the channel. I'm honored to be on your channel. Yeah, I've seen some of the interview that you've done. Just amazing. The one with was it Tina? You
Yes.
did two with your husband as well, two video in two part. It was just amazing. So I'm very glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. And before we jump into, I want to mention that Jazz has two channels. So, Jazz, you want to tell us about your channels?
Yeah, okay. My channel, my English channel is Jazz Nomad TV. I should have edited my name there, but I
I'll
I
fix
forgot
it.
to do that. Yeah, so it's Jazz Nomad TV. And my other channel, my friend channel is just Jazz Nomad.
So let's jump in. And I am the youngest of six, so I know about family dynamics when it comes to taking care of parents. But I am really interested into hearing your perspective, especially coming from the African culture side.
Yeah. So in Africa that we care about our elders, right?
Hmm.
Like house, how do you call it where you put older people in Europe or America?
Nursing homes.
Nursing home does not exist in Africa, right?
Hmm.
So we take care of our older parents. So
Hmm.
my mom got diagnosed with cancer, like, a long time
Right.
ago because she died in 2011.
Hmm.
So during treatment, she had to come to France because she was living in Gabon. She didn't want to be in
Hmm.
France. So she had to come regularly for treatment, so maybe a
Hmm.
year or two. And she was either with us or either with us or with my sister. But she spent most of the time with my elder sister because we are four and I'm the youngest. Right. So we had some issue about who had the responsibility for the bills, for looking after her,
Hmm.
etc.
So in the African culture, is there an actual hierarchy that's like already pinned, or do they look for to see who makes the most money and that's the person that should pay?
That's an excellent question, Vicky. The thing is, there's like a hierarchy because it's usually the oldest
Okay.
siblings that will look after the mom, and then the younger siblings will come and help out, either
Okay.
financially or take turns, right?
Hmm.
And we were all willing to take my mom, but my older sister wanted to have that responsibility. It created so much issue in the family
Got it.
dynamic, right? We were all willing to help. And I think even for my mom, it was go to not just stay one place and sometimes go to different houses to
Got
have a
it.
break a little bit and have a change of environment. And
Yes.
the reason what I wanted to come is that often when these happen in a family, we lose track on why, we're here, right?
Right.
Here to help our mom to have the best support from our children.
Yes.
Instead, we focus on, you know, s- side things. To this day, my mom has passed 11 years. It has created such a rip into our families because we
Yes.
could not understand, how to care for our mom together as and create a team
Hmm.
instead of I've done that more than you, you should do that. And it was
Yes.
really like a battle between us.
Yeah. I experienced a similar incident with my mom's mom when she was sick. Um, for some strange reason, my mom's brother, my uncle, felt this need to insulate my grandmother and really kind of regulate, when we'd visit, like sit in with us and make sure we weren't talking about money or things like that. And it's like, what? She's dying of cancer. We just came to see grandma.
Yes, exactly. It's really sad to see that. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about it because I
Mhm.
don't want that for my kids.
Right.
Having lived that experience and how far the rib between our family got created because of us not being able to work as a team. This is
Mhm.
why when I see you and your husband talking and how you're looking after,
Mhm.
it's your mother-in-law, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
before that, you also help your father-in-law.
yes,
Right. So I'm talking to my kid to if something happened to us tomorrow and we are not able to, I want you to work together as a team, right?
yeah,
It's not who get what or who does what more than the other, but it's coming together and having a plan of action to say, okay, I do this, I do that. If mom is
yes,
in your house, what do you need? How can we support you?
yes,
But we couldn't have this communication because usually what happened is when in Africa, our mom couldn't stay in Africa because for cancer to be treated there,
yes,
she wouldn't have lived as long as she did, right? So she needed to be here.
right,
In Africa, it's very easy. She's at home. We have helpers, you can have all the help that you want.
right.
So we are just there to finance and we are there to supervise, but we're not hands-on,
Mhm.
right? But when we are in Europe, it's a different story. We really have to be hands-on, taking her to hospital and
Right.
appointments are, looking after a medicine. Even if there's usually a nurse that would come,
Mhm.
daily, but she will come maybe to check the medicines and etc.
Yeah,
But she's not there all day to help with the daily things. Like at the end, she couldn't, she were wearing
right.
nappies at the end.
Yes,
It takes. I understand that that was very stressful for my sister. I wish
yes,
we knew how to communicate.
right.
And following your channel, Vicky, taught me a lot. Okay. Even for my own part, the own part that I play into all that drama. Because when you are a caregiver, there's such a, I don't know, I'm afraid to use the word burden on you. You can burn out.
Definitely can, and that's what I'm trying to get people to understand too, because even here in America, the African American community, we also believe in not putting our people into homes and
Okay.
taking care of them. And
Okay.
I think it was because my aunt was a nurse. She helped to try to break that cycle that says, okay, to a point. If you're actually helping, then that's one thing. If you're actually helping and you're not burning out and they're not being neglected, and when I say neglected, is like you're not purposely neglecting them, but because you can't attend to their needs 24 hours a day and still work and still live, that is like unintentional neglect. And
Okay.
you don't see it that way. And then also to, my father voicing his concern that we're seeing him naked and crying that we're having to change his depends.
Ah,
So when we got to this point with my in-laws and knew that they could afford it, I didn't want to repeat that cycle, and so we still didn't put them in a facility, but they have caregivers and helpers that do the things that would let them keep their dignity.
yes, and I'm so happy that you point that out. There's something that happened when my mom was when she was at the end of her life,
Hmm.
where she was not anymore really conscious.
Right.
She had a lot of morphine, etc. So she couldn't do a lot. She was a very proud woman, and she always done everything herself to the
Yes.
last day. Honestly, even when she had nappy, she will do everything herself. But it
Yes.
came to a point where she couldn't, and I could see not, I don't know, in her eye. That stayed with me, where I was
Yes.
changing her a nappy, and wiping her and etc. And she was looking at me with so much sadness in her
Yes.
eyes. And I knew because at that time, even myself, I felt really bad, for having that gesture of changing her. And
Hmm.
it was like I was robbing her from a dignity.
Yes.
And my brother, and that my brother cried because at one time I was not there. And at that point, the lady that was coming to help her was not there yet. So my brother
Yes.
had to change her at some point. He broke down in tears
Yes.
because as a son to look change your mom. And after that is, as you say, we made sure that there were two people that were coming and,
Yes.
looking after her so she can keep that dignity. And
Yes.
yes, so I understand. And even with my mother-in-law, who's 85 today, we
Wow.
rarely change her. We have a whole team. She's in Cameroon. We
Mhm.
has a we have a whole team of people, and she doesn't like to change people all the time. When
Right.
she likes somebody, she like to stay with them because she already confident, and she doesn't want to show a dig
Yes,
timidity to everyone, right? To changing people
exactly.
all the time. So yeah, it's difficult when you as kid you become you parent it's
Yep,
like
you're
you're parenting
parenting your
your
parents.
parent, right? And I know it's something that really traumatized me somehow, you know, uh
Yes.
because of what I saw in her face and in her eyes. she,
Yeah,
she
and
didn't want that.
yep, and for my sister and I, it was like it was a no-brainer. You took care of us, we're gonna take care of you. But the
Yes.
look in my father's eyes and to see him crying that day that we had to clean him up, and we looked at each other like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
how are we going to do this?" And
Yeah.
we had to admit defeat. So, unfortunately, we couldn't afford to bring someone in, but his insurance would afford to send him to a nursing home. We found a really nice one.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we found a really nice one. And his demeanor just picked up so much. He was so much happier. He was smiling again because all we did was visit. We
Yes.
didn't take care of
Yes.
him.
Yeah. Exactly. Now after having lived that with my mom, I'm asking myself today, because I'm very close to my daughters, right?
Mhm,
It's like, would that be an issue for me to have my kids do that,
mhm.
help me in that way
And
tomorrow?
you know what? And you might say that it doesn't bother you today, but then later on, you're like, crap, now it does bother me. And that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
You can change your mind.
Yeah.
I think for me, not having kids, like I don't want to do that to anybody.
Yeah, and I agree with you because the one thing I don't want is to burden my children.
Mhm,
I really don't want them to feel embarrassed,
right.
to have to, I don't know. It's strange. I don't know. Until I'm there, I wouldn't know. But your channel made me understand so much, even my mother-in-law.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things where I was sometimes upset at her behavior, because couldn't put myself in her shoes. But
And
now
the
I
same thing.
understand.
That was the
Yeah.
same thing, and it was, wow, I just didn't understand. I thought that I would just had a bad mother-in-law, and what I actually had was a mother-in-law who has actually had this condition for a while, and nothing had been done about it. So now, the dynamic is completely different. She's happy to see me when I come over. The first
Yeah.
part of my marriage is like, "Ugh, she's here." But I think
It-
that there were some battles trying to get her diagnosed where she was just like fighting us tooth and nail. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me, and you can't make me anything be wrong with me. And we noticed that there, going to some of the doctor's appointments, some of the things that she was saying. Um, I think that's what really helped us realize she needed a lot more help. Like one thing that she said to us was, every time you take me to the doctor and they find something that's not wrong with me, I get the bill. And we're like, no, you don't. Or we go in there and the doctor would say, your gait is wrong. I want to send you to physical therapy. Or noticing that she wasn't remembering what he said in the moment and repeating it again. And she'd come back and tell us, oh, he said I was fine. He says I don't have dementia at all. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, no, that's not what he said.
This is
But I don't think we really took the time. I know I didn't take the time in the beginning of my relationship to really listen to her. It just all came across as me like, oh great, here comes me, old mother-in-law, and I'm done completely tuning her out. So I'm not really listening to her. And then we took that trip to Washington, D.C., and I'm like, wait a minute, this just doesn't seem right to me at
yeah.
all. One of the things that stood out for me was there's long walks and she's not walking so great. And every single person that walked up and said, ma'am, did you need a wheelchair? She got defensive. I'm not old, but
Yes.
but you can't stand by yourself. You're
Mm.
struggling to walk to the gate, and anyone that offered her help, she got mad about. And that really like kind of threw me the other way. I'm like, well, heck, I'll take the wheelchair. She won't take it. I'll take it. This is a long walk here in this freaking airport.
Yeah, and listening to you and your husband talk about your mother-in-law, it somehow makes me understand a lot my own mother-in-law.
Mhm.
Because often the relationship between a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law can be a little bit difficult. And that was
Yes.
the same for me and my mother-in-law. Funny enough, my mother-in-law did the same thing. I
Right.
saw her many, like, when there were people coming and visiting her, she would pretend that she can stand and she would refuse to take the walker, and she
Yes.
doesn't want to have the pushchair, how do you call it? Not the pushchair,
Oh yeah, the wheelchair.
the wheelchair and etc., because she still want to show us the woman that she was. And I couldn't comprehend it. But I'm like, but she's already 80. It's okay to be old
Yes.
and to be, but she would not accept it. And she get mad and angry at us. You know?
Exactly. We
And
they had tickets to a theater, and the first time that we took her in a wheelchair, the ushers were like, "Oh, great, she's got a wheelchair now." So even the ushers understood, but she was so mad about being in that wheelchair. She stopped everybody, even complete strangers, that I'm mean and I'm making her ride in this wheelchair. And then so she hadn't been diagnosed yet. She hasn't been wasn't on her medication yet, so she was still fighting us. And I just told Michael, I'm not pushing your mom anywhere anymore. You push her. She's gonna get me beat up in this place. Everyone's thinking this mean old black lady is being
yeah,
mean to this little white lady. I was like, I can't do this. You're gonna have to push your mom.
no, it was the same. She's like, when people were coming, she asked us to sit her in a sofa
Mhm.
to position her so people aren't aware that she can't walk on her own, so she can't, you
Right.
know, and to this day, she still wants people to see her a certain way. And this is what makes me really realize that we may get older in age,
Right.
but our minds still want to remain
Yes.
what we were once, right?
Yes.
Um,
We don't want to
so
be seen as less than what we think we are. We
exactly.
don't want to be seen as that shriveled up person who is in the corner and is a burden.
Yeah.
And I get it. I really do get it. But after I think dealing with my in-laws, because my mom was the opposite. My mom would raise her hand, help me get this down from the shelf. Make sure you bring my
Yeah.
walker. Make sure you bring my wheelchair.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I remember we went
Yeah.
on a trip to visit my brother, and we got to the airport, and the wheelchair wasn't waiting for her. And she's like, "You didn't order my wheelchair. I told you I can't watch it." No, mom, they're not sitting here waiting for you to show up. She's gonna call for it. Yeah. So I guess it was completely different dynamic, and I guess that's probably why I didn't really understand my mother-in-law, because my mom, she was born, she unfortunately at the time when she was a child, she got polio and scarlet fever. So she's been a sick child all her life. And so I think she always knew some of her limitations and she never was afraid to ask for help. And
Yeah.
then I get over onto the other side and it's like, no, you can't help me. There's nothing to see here. Go away. I'm fine.
Yeah, I know. And it's also it's difficult to say. What you say, my mom as well was somebody that was simple, you
Mhm.
know. Although us changing us, that was something different.
Right.
But she wouldn't be a person that would care about walking with a cane or
Mhm.
in a chair, in a wheelchair. But my
Yes.
mother-in-law was somebody that was like a powerful woman, a
Yes.
businesswoman, right? So it's funny to me that at that certain age, you still keep that uh, belief of who you were and you still want to
Yes.
hold on to the power. Now I understand,
Yes.
but at first it was something that I couldn't comprehend. I'm like, it's okay, you are old, accept that you're old. I was fighting a little bit with her, but now I
Yes.
understand that it's not easy because today, me, even at 51, you know, I can recognize some limitation that I have now that I didn't have when I was 30, right?
Yes.
Although in my head, I think that I still can do everything that I want to do,
Yes.
but my knees will remind me that, hold on, you're 50.
Those darn knees, man, they
You know,
love to talk.
I know, but your brain, it's like your brain does not compute. Your brain's still young, actually, right? And unless you have dementia or whatever. But
Yep,
yeah,
and that's the problem, I think, with the dementia. They can't see what the rest of us see because they're stuck in their past memories of themselves and they can't see it. I know a lot of times my mother-in-law will look into the mirror and say things like, "Who's that old person?" But when she's not looking at herself, she'll tell you all the time, "I'm not old." Or she'll tell you, "I walk completely fine. I don't need a wheelchair." But you ask her to stand up, within 2 seconds, she's shaking. She can't stand on her own, but she doesn't see that part.
wow. Wow. That's what I love with your channel, Vicky, because it teach me a lot. As African people, dementia, it's not something that is accepted in our culture,
Hmm.
right? So even if what you're talking about, I could have seen that in trait of family members, we
Hmm.
won't call that because we will never look for this. We will
Yes.
never go to the doctor for to look for this. We'll call it old age or a difficult old person, you know.
Yes.
I know, my mother-in-law brother who is like a character as you describe. Is somebody that you would not like at all, but no one would never thought of doing some test to
Hmm.
understand what's happening to him because
Yes.
so yes,
There's
I'm learning a lot through your channel, and I'm hoping to take from your learning and teach it to my community.
yeah, I will definitely share whatever I have so that you can translate it into whatever language that you need to,
Yeah.
because I think it's
it's
important, because I think even as a
Yeah.
child I had a different idea of dementia than what I have now, because I always thought they're just crazy people. They have
Yes.
mental issues. And that's not it at all. It
Yeah.
really is damage to the brain. It's not that you're mentally ill. And there's so many different causes. I'm finishing up that video as well. You guys are going to be shocked at all the things that can cause dementia. All the things that can cause- and so like if you have high blood pressure can put pressure on your brain and actually cause holes in your brain, and that interrupts your brain's interceptors, so you can't think and concentrate and reason like you used to. And so going through this with Mill really has opened up my eyes to, it's not a crazy person disease. There are so many things that can cause it. Even a UTI or being dehydrated can
Mm.
cause you to have dementia-like symptoms. So,
Oh,
um,
wow.
so
Okay.
that's why, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna, joke about it anymore. Like, oh my God, you just got dementia. You're just crazy. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that anymore. I'm not saying.
Yeah, but it's important to be educated about that, you see, because for a lot of people, it will be just like, oh, it's a crazy person, and don't
Yes.
try to understand, further than that, why the person is acting this or this way.
That is exactly why we fired the first doctor, because in his mind, these are just old people issues and just put them in a home. He didn't even want to help us understand what was wrong with them. He just basically
Mm,
just wrote it off. And he actually said to me, well, even Ronald Reagan had to go into a home. Why should your parents be any different? Like, well, first of all, Ronald Reagan had Alzheimer's. They figured out what was wrong with him. Why aren't you helping us figure out what's wrong with them?
yeah, yeah. I want to ask you a question, Vicky,
Mhm.
because you are working so well with your husband, because I follow the both interview very well. And if you had an advice to give, because to this day, for the question you asked me at the beginning about, how it was difficult to deal with my mom illness and looking after her,
Mhm.
right? As siblings, what would you advise? Because you had your mom who was sick,
Mhm.
your dad as well.
Mhm.
How you and your siblings, because you are the youngest of six, how did you all, work together as a team to take care of your dad? You laughing? Oh,
So I am the youngest of six, and so the dynamic in my family was my father was the second marriage. So I'm from that. my mom and my dad, and then my older siblings are from my mom and their dad. Um,
Mm.
and so there was a boy and a girl at the end, and so it was me and one of my sisters who pulled together to take care of the family. Everyone else kind of was off on their own. They're raising their kids. I had two brothers in the military, and we were kind of like, I don't even think we even tried to rally the troops. We knew we could
Oh,
rely on each other, and the two of us just stuck together and did it. If somebody volunteered to do something, great, but we never chased anybody down because I think in my mind, I didn't think I could even trust them to do it because, you're in another state, you're on a boat, in the Navy, or you're in a ditch in the Army, and the other person taking care of their kids. I don't even think that we even try to reach out to anybody at that time. With my mom, it was the same thing because my mom was much later than my dad. So
mhm.
while people were out of the service by then, there were still people who, are they're living their lives. They're still raising their kids, and they weren't around. So I don't think they really understood mom. So
Right.
that was what I remember having to argue with my brother over my dad. He hadn't been around. He's off living his life. He comes and he's like starting to bark orders at my sister and I about, what dad needs and why aren't we doing this and why aren't we doing that? And it was like almost a physical confrontation going, you know what, you haven't been around. Get the heck out of here. Don't tell us how to do this. And
Yeah.
so it can be very, very contentious, especially when people don't take the time to understand the situation and just come in and try to bark orders because I'm the oldest or bark orders
Yeah.
because I'm the son and they haven't
Yeah.
been there. But knowing that I had my sister made it easier, and we had each other. And I think that that bond came because her husband had cancer, and I just was always there for her. What do you need?
Wow.
I got you.
Yeah.
And then that kind of just translated right on into the parents. We just stayed that team, and we basically acted like I don't think like had no other siblings.
Yeah.
So,
But I find that unfair. Although my sister got really upset with us, because of the burden of having the mom. And I think as for African, the older kid always feel like they're the one who have the responsibility, right? So she wanted to have my mom at her place, but at the same time, she was upset at us because she had our mom all the time, right? And even when we had to take our mom we had to force to take her to bring her elsewhere because she wouldn't allow us, you
Mhm,
know? And for me, I find it sad that if like you are six kid or four kid like we were, whether it's the two of you, like you and your sister,
mhm, mhm,
walking directly, the other one, even if they're not there physically, they need to participate somehow to help. Because I don't know if you lived next door to your mom, but you have to go there all the time. There's a cost. There's not
mhm.
just an emotional cost or
Yes.
physical. There's a financial cost also of
Mhm.
being a carer,
Yes.
right? So I feel that, and I think that's what my sister wanted to
Mhm.
communicate, but could not communicate well. And I think there's a way that the other one can participate, is
Yes.
financially to help those who are there fighting and helping,
Yeah.
caring, because caring for a parent is difficult.
It is.
As much as we love them,
It,
it's
it is
hard.
it is because you have your family that you just created. You got your
Yeah,
husband, you've got your children, then you've got your parents, and so you're like kind of that sandwich generation. You're taking care of multiple layers of people. And I
yeah,
think that when Michael and I talk about this, us both being the youngest, I think we were the closest to our parents because the older
yeah.
the older kids, as soon as I'm 18, I'm out of here. I'm off, I'm
I've
living my
left the
life, I'm
home
doing
long
this.
time ago. Yeah,
And then when he and I were growing up, it was a recession. Nobody was in a rush to leave mom and dad's house. So we were there a little bit longer. I think we got
yeah,
to know them a little bit better. They got
yeah,
to know us a little bit better. I think they could see that they could really rely on us because we've always been around. We didn't run away. We didn't run off to our lives. We had our lives, but they were still part of our lives because we lived with them much longer than anybody else.
yeah. I understand that. I understand that. And it's the same, the thing is, after what happened with my mom,
Hmm.
I vowed myself to do better with my mother-in-law
Yeah.
because I felt that with my mom, it was so chaotic, creating so much chaos. So
Yes.
then we went to live 2 years in Cameroon to look after my mother-in-law. And that was hard, to be
Mhm.
there. But I don't know, I felt like I was doing just somehow, I was repairing, maybe not, working well with my siblings to look after my mom.
Mhm.
And so I know what it is when you have to look after, and my mother-in-law is a tough cookie. Yeah, you know, she's a tough cookie.
Yeah, and
But
I give
yeah.
thanks to my grandma as well. So my grandfather, my mother's father, he outlived all his adult children. So in his second marriage, and I still call her grandma, I don't call her step grandma. When he was starting to have his decline, she just like did everything known to man. Only thing she wanted for me to do was come over and provide comic relief. um, but watching her, just jump in and take care of him and, never asking for help. That's the one thing that I do regret, though, is that I didn't ask her if she needed help. She was just doing such a
No.
great job. I look back now, that's the one thing that I would change there. I did move back closer to home to be with, with family for if we had to do this again, but she was doing such a great job. I didn't ask her, and so I do feel bad about that.
Yeah, I understand. I understand, for me, even the decision to move to Africa at some point is because I had decided to go because my mom, as soon as the treatment was done in France, she run back to Africa straight away. She didn't want to live in Europe.
Okay.
So at some point, I wanted to go move to Gabon to be with her and help her
Hmm.
you know and we were so discussing it with my husband. Our kid was still young, but unfortunately she died,
Right.
soon after. Like the day she goes at the hospital, I spoke to her at 11 p.m. and she dies the next morning.
Wow.
But I was traveling that morning at 6 a.m. and she died. Sorry, she died at 11 p.m. The day just before, and I was traveling in the
Hmm.
morning. So that stayed with me because if I had, moved forward with that decision,
Hmm.
but for the kid to come after school, they were still at school, etc.
Yes.
I was waiting
Right.
for the holidays and all of that. And that always stayed with me. So when my mother-in-law was not able to look after herself anymore, although she thought she
Right.
did. She's the kind, she always missing something, and she's accusing everyone to take something from her. And if you look well, it's under a pillow or somewhere,
Yes.
but she will accuse everyone to have stolen from her. And so yeah, so when my husband said, okay, my mom is not well and maybe we need to do something about it, I didn't hesitate into going and live there, 2 years
Right.
in Cameroon to look after her. Um, as I don't know, maybe as a way of doing
Yes.
what I couldn't do for my mom. Yeah.
I think we always have it in our heart to try to do the most that we can do, and you didn't get a chance to do that with your mom, so you're trying to make it up. And
Yeah.
I totally get it because my sister, she was more hands-on with my mom
Yeah.
than I was because I wasn't living close. I was still here in California. I was about 35 miles away, which in California it's a long drive. It's only 35 miles, but it's a long drive because traffic is so terrible. So I'm more of a weekend person, or whenever my sister told me, "Hey, I need you to do this, that, and the other," and so I was always, there for that. A running joke was one time she called to say, "Hey, I had to call the ambulance. They're going to take mom to this hospital." I go, "Okay, I'll see you there," and I actually beat the ambulance to the hospital
Oh,
because it was in the middle of the night, so there was no traffic. And she was like,
yeah.
were you speeding?" I'm like, "No, it was no traffic." And I think that's why I don't really think of what I'm doing with my mother-in-law, or I should say my in-laws at the time, and now my mother-in-law, as a sacrifice. I think it's just something that, they raised us, they need us, and it's that trust factor that's there. I mean, I could have walked away and just said, "Nah, your parents are going into a facility." they can afford it, they can go into a facility. But that trust factor wasn't there. And I talked about it with, my father-in-law just being in the rehab so he could come home. Being away from his home and his people and his stuff, that just really messed with his sensibilities. And he just thought that we
Exactly.
had less, wrote him off. I can't
Yeah.
imagine that, having to move them away into a situation that they're not familiar with as their memories are starting to go. And every single day, it's a now I got to learn where I am because this is not in my memory at all.
Yeah. But I think it's also the character. It's also who you are, I think your husband and you, because as you how we spoke about, there's a lot of siblings that are there and who act like it's not their responsibility. And I still think that's unfair because even if I didn't have my mom all the time under my roof because my sister would have that responsibility, I was helping financially
Mhm,
always. I would participate to bills when necessary because as she had to travel often to Africa, it cost a lot. So we
mhm,
needed to participate for that. We paid an insurance for her for like how do you say that? When if you die in Europe and you need to go back, the body need to go back. I forgot the
uh-huh.
name for that.
Oh, yeah, I
Uh
don't remember the name either, but yeah,
repatriation or
it's
something,
not
but
it's not cheap, is it?
it's not cheap at all. So we paid for this. We paid also for an insurance for funeral costs. Yeah, it
Mhm,
costs. So when she died, we had a lot of things that was already made, put in place. So
mhm,
we work well on the financial side. But my regret still always that to this day we cannot even reconcile because there's still how do you call it? Resentment, you
right,
know, resentment there, but you didn't do that. I did that, but you didn't help me to do that.
right.
But the bickering that I think it's important to talk about
Yes,
because and after after thinking of what happened and listening to Tina to you about the caregiving, I understand where she was coming from.
mhm,
You see what I mean?
yes,
I understand. I think I think she just doesn't know how to communicate
right,
effectively. But I think it was just a frustration, the burden of having to carry for your mom and being almost like a feeling like a prisoner that you can't do
yes,
much because
and
there's nobody next to you. Yeah.
exactly, and it's double-sided. So you got those
Yeah.
people who jump in and, like me, "Nobody can do it better than me. It's all me. I got this.
Yeah.
I don't need anybody else." And then
That's
you,
my sister.
resent people who didn't help you, but you didn't ask for help and you didn't let them help.
That's my sister.
That's why I tell people you gotta understand your limitations because you're going to need help, and it's fine that you need help, but you gotta let people know you need help, and then you gotta accept it.
Yeah.
You can't walk around and be a
Yeah.
martyr and then be mad because nobody helped
You put it in better word. That's
you.
exactly my sister that you describe. But you have to also understand that as in the African culture, the elder has that title, that way she need to show up for everyone else.
Right.
Like even if something happened in Africa, we'll all put money together to send it. It will always go into her name
Uh-huh.
because as the elder, she need to be that person that everybody need to respect. She has that place. So if we took care of our mom, it's like she was not doing her job. Do you see what I'm talking about?
I do, but you just said something that made me think. So
Hmm.
everybody pulls the money together and it's
Yeah,
in her name as the
yeah,
eldest.
yeah.
But that's the same thing with care. Everybody pulls their weight with the care under her direction as the elder. She's still in charge. And I think that's what people need to start thinking of it in a little different way is being the elder doesn't mean I have to do all the work. It just means I
Yes.
need to make sure the work gets done.
Done. Exactly. Exactly. But she also thought that she would be doing things better than us, that we were not able to do
Mhm.
the things properly. So she would take everything
Yes.
with her, but then she'd be angry at us.
Yes.
Why did you not do that? But you didn't let me.
The other thing too that I got out of this, and working with my different family members too, is when you're not living close and you're not there and you don't understand, I think there's a little bit of denial, like, there's no way mom could be like that. I just saw her 2 years ago and she was fine.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
dad was fine when I saw him 6 years ago. I don't know what you're talking about. And so I think there's a little bit of denial and also a little bit of regret on their part that they've been gone so long and they didn't see what was changing or what was happening. And so it's kind of a, my little word, preservation deception. They got to have this mental picture that the people there are probably making it seem a little bit worse than it is. It's probably not that bad because some people also can't accept that their parents are getting older. Some people can't accept that their parents
Exactly.
are sick, and a lot of people are not going to accept that their parents are actually dying.
Yeah, I know. I
Mhm.
know. We think that our parents are, immortal. It's funny.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, my aunt was an ICU nurse, so some of the stories that she would tell of people coming in about, I just refuse to believe you. You need to fix my parent, or you need to fix my wife, just because they were in such denial as to, what they had, because they couldn't let go of that reality that what's my life going to be like without that person, and that was the most important thing for them is how does this affect me versus how does this affect them.
It's completely selfish, and recognize that. The last time my mom was in France, the doctor said, okay, she had 3 months, right?
Hmm.
Despite that, we still did not compute that she
Right.
was dying. But my mom was a futurist woman for an African lady.
Hmm.
She did she prepared a burial in Africa, like
Hmm.
prepared the place where she would be buried. She did so much so we wouldn't have to,
So
you know,
progressive.
completely. But that's unheard of because
Hmm.
in Africa, if you talk about death, it's so taboo. You can't
Yes.
talk about will, you can't talk about preparing for when you're not
Mhm.
here anymore. You can't talk about insurance because like you're wishing somebody to die,
Yes.
right? So it was really different the way she did things. But
Yes.
she lived 1 year instead of 3 months, right? And that sometimes I feel like she was holding on of us because we couldn't let go.
Right.
None
Hmm.
of the kid, like the doctor told us, but we were like, no, I don't know. We just brush it off, and so when she died, it was such a shock. Although we knew, but we did not prepare for it.
Yeah, because we
Yeah.
were when Phil was starting to his mind and his body weren't working together, and he even noticed his mind and his body wasn't working together. He couldn't understand why his mind says stand up and walk, but his body won't let him stand up and walk.
Mm.
And it was really bothering him. And when they made the tough decision to move to hospice, the guy says, "Yeah, he looks great. He's got a little bit of issues. I don't, he's going to be around. Well, we just want to put him on hospice, make him comfortable, blah, blah, blah." It was less than 3 weeks. And
Oh,
none of us were expecting it to be that fast. And you
yeah.
fast forward to Jimmy Carter, who's been on hospice for what, a decade? So you never really know just the
Yes.
person's will and what
Yeah.
the body and the mind is going to do. So that's the one thing that I tell people too is, hospice is not necessarily a death sentence. Just like I said, you compare my father-in-law to Jimmy Carter and to other people, you just don't know what you're going to get. And that's why you got to love on them every chance you get.
I know. I know. And you have to accept also death is part of life.
Hmm.
And to be honest, although we were holding on my mom, at the end we were at peace for her because cancer is something that hurt. She was in pain.
Yes.
And knowing that she was not in pain anymore and she hold on and hold on and hold on,
Yes.
I think for her kids.
Yeah, my mom, it was her heart, and so she was really sick, and she needed a heart surgery. That surgery was either she needed to get better for the surgery, but she wasn't going to get better without the surgery. So she made the decision she's going to have the surgery, and if God takes her home, God takes her home. And the night before her surgery, my family's probably going to kill me for telling the story. In my one-on-one conversation with her, she says, "Okay, you know exactly what I want. You're on the medical power of attorney. You're on everything. Don't let them keep me alive just so that your sisters and brothers can die with me and we all be buried together." She goes, because she says, because they'll prop me on that couch until they die.
She had a sense of humor. Ma-
I was like, "Oh my gosh," but you know what? She was right. They probably would've.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, and unfortunately, she passed on the operating table. No one had to
Oh,
make any decisions, but, that just stuck with me, and, I can laugh about that. I was actually laughing at it then, but, the family members, they were not laughing at that. They didn't think that was funny. So, as you can see, I have a weird sense of humor. I think I probably get that from my mom.
But
So it
it's good to laugh about these things. You see what I mean? I think we take it so seriously. I'm not
Mhm.
saying it's not a serious subject, but we get so tense around it that
Yes.
we, yeah, we make it so hard and so difficult even to have a conversation about it because it's taboo. It's
Yes.
difficult to communicate. That's why I actually wanted to come on. I don't know if I really portray exactly what happened then, but for me, it's really important that family get together when we know that our parents will get older.
Mhm.
When we reach 50, we have parents that are aging already. So
Yes.
it's important to come together. And that's the discussion I'm trying to have with my husband and his family, you know.
Mhm.
So, but lucky enough, we rotate well together. I was
Yes.
there for 2 years. Now my sister-in-law is there. She's Cameroonian. She just married
Uh-huh.
my husband's older brother. So
Mhm.
she's there taking care of the mom. And now she's preparing to go join her husband to France. We're now trying to find who's going to be looking after the mom
Right.
because it can never be just, I mean, she's just there supervising. There's a whole team of medical looking after her, but there's always the need of a family member there to support.
Exactly.
Yes, because there's too much abuse of she can't handle her finances anymore
Right.
or anything like that. So you need to be a
Mhm.
family member to be there, right? And
Exactly.
I think that we really find a good way to communicate. And my mom experience really taught me as well of the
Mhm.
way we're working together. I've really discussing,
Mhm.
there's a group WhatsApp
Yes.
where we know what's happening with the mom,
Mhm.
daily, there's information. And when there's a
That's right.
decision to be taken, everybody discuss about it. If
Mhm.
there's a financial issue, is how do we deal with this? And
Mhm.
that's how it should be.
Exactly. I like that you said that you probably didn't discuss what you planned to come on here to discuss, because I know that we've been talking about these chats since like October, and
Yeah.
then my videos came out, and I think that you didn't discuss what you thought you were going to discuss because now you see things in a different light.
Yes.
and
Yes.
and that's
Yeah.
and that's and that's the whole
Yeah.
goal is, one, you're not a terrible kid.
Yeah. It's yeah. Yeah.
You're not a terrible sibling. You're not a terrible mom. There's so many dynamics to caring for someone else when you also have your own life. And
Yeah.
I think that we can now, like I said, looking back, this is me almost 40 years of caring for people, my mistakes through my 20s and everything else, is I can now see it for what it is. Every single situation is completely different. There is no
Yeah.
playbook that's going to help you get through every single thing and give you every single answer.
This is it. There's no playbook.
Hmm.
Like when you parent, there's not a manual book of how to become a
Hmm.
parent, of how to look after your parents. That
Right.
Yes, you learn with time, and we make mistakes and we learn from these mistakes.
Hmm.
So
Yep,
yeah.
and we can look back on the mistakes and we can see, you know, maybe my mother-in-law wasn't a bad mother-in-law.
I know. Yeah.
Maybe my siblings weren't selfish. They were living their lives and just couldn't see what was going on at home, or couldn't see that, it doesn't take away from her stature if she lets people in to help her, things like that. So I hope that this conversation can help people see all the different facets of this and just look back on past bads and past hurts and hopefully try to heal from them and see that, at that time there was probably a lot of misconception, misunderstanding, and let's come together and try to fix that now. And so we can make better decisions going forward to when the next time it happens, and hopefully don't repeat the same cycle of creating bad blood.
Exactly. And this is why I want to thank you for your channel. Remember, you came on my channel and I told you your channel is extremely important, honestly. I learn daily, although a lot of things is maybe based on in American,
Right.
but there's so much in it that I'm taking and I'm applying. And it's true that if I had not been listening to you every time you have a video out, this conversation we have would have been different
Right.
because I would still have a resentment of my sister being so this and that,
Hmm.
maybe not putting myself completely into her shoes as well, you know,
Hmm.
understanding really what giving is, even if I was
Yes.
part of it, but I didn't see the whole picture. I just saw where I was with the caregiving. So
Yep.
thank you for your work, the work that you're doing, Vicky. It's really a fantastic job that you're doing at educating us.
Well, I have to give you big kudos for being, my biggest supporter from day one when you found my channel. And I was, talking through a little cartoon because I was afraid to show my face.
And your beautiful face. I'm happy that you're showing your face today.
But
Yeah.
you were so right. What I'm talking about is too important to hide behind a cartoon avatar. And I think that people can now see, okay, she's not trying to sell us anything. She's just trying to share. She's just trying
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, and very valuable and important information that we should all listen and have,
Mhm,
to prepare for when we're not, for myself later, how do I want to take care of? And
mhm.
it taught me to be okay to accept help.
Yes.
That was a biggie for me. The light from your in-laws, that shocked me to this day because I would be that person.
It's,
You know,
it's funny because Dawn reached out to me last night and said, "Hey, the lights in my bathroom went out while I was in there," and I'm like, "Dang, I need Vicki to come change my light bulb." I go, "Yeah, that
yeah,
that story is gonna stick with a lot of people because I think a lot of people are going to find their light bulb story. It might not have been light
yeah,
bulbs, but they're gonna look
yeah.
back and go, "Oh my gosh, that happened to me too, but it was something else."
Exactly, exactly. So it's a good lesson, yeah, to learn from that. And it's okay to let your family help you, you know?
we
So
My mother-in-law, well, we didn't want to be a burden. Well, it's a burden when we need to change 22.
22
It's not a burden
instead
when we
of
only
one.
change one. And
Yeah,
because of their short-term memory, back then it was like we were just mad, so we weren't really sure exactly how long they've been out. But because of their short-term memory loss, those light bulbs could have been out for years.
oh,
And
yeah.
because we were
Wow.
going over during the day, we never noticed.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine how dangerous that could be?
Hmm.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Okay.
then we figured out that's why there were flashlights all over the house.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Looking back, you go,
Yes.
God, they had a flashlight
Yes.
every 6 inches. So thank you so much for joining me. And I hope that everybody can, like I said, see that things change, your perceptions can change over time. And hopefully this will help you change your perceptions sooner rather than later.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Thank you very much. And I do hope really, as you said, that, people learn from it.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Jazz as much as I did. I will leave a link to her channel in the description below. If you have any thoughts, questions, want to share your own experience about taking care of your parents with siblings, please leave them in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, you may want to do so you'll notified of additional chats that I have planned with the rest of my YouTube family. Then head over here to see my interview with Jazz, where we talk about caring for aging parents as a couple. If you made it this far with me, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you over here.